So one thing that I thought was pretty fascinating is that the things that we live and take, the things that we live through and take for granted, uh, are the same things that the future people will obsess over. If you think about things like, for example, um, those old retro diners, I'm not sure what year they're from, maybe the 90s or something, but those old diners with the sleek design and the curvy furniture, the shiny metal, you know, with the gas stations and the colorful cars and the banana splits and soda machines, jukeboxes, the whole thing. Those people were just living, you know? They were just living. And now, certain movies and commercials and brands and games and franchises are just very obsessed with that aesthetic, that retro aesthetic. You think about fantasy. Fantasy is all about the medieval times. And the people in the medieval times were just living. I mean, they were also dying a lot too. But they weren't like, oh, this is so cool, or this is, I love knights and shining armor and taverns and adventures and stuff. It was just people living. And which means that perhaps the stuff we do today will be important in the future. People will love it and care about it. However, I'm sure there's parts of history that people just don't care about. Things that aren't popular aesthetics. But maybe they will in the future. So what would the aesthetic be of the modern day? Well, one thing I think that future people will really enjoy is our perception of robotics and artificial intelligence. Because all this stuff is relatively new, or in its infancy at least, in the current year, which is 2025 as of this recording. The way we think about it, a lot of people don't like it, and a lot of people also think it's going to be a massive hit and it's going to change everything. We have big brands and companies making these minimalistic looking robots, and they're going to continue doing that, I'm sure, that will do everything for you. They will clean your house. We've had smart houses for a while where people obsess over the most, of everything being automated. Now, in the future, is it just going to be, the next level of now? Is it just going to be more automated? It's possible, but it could also be wildly different that we could never predict. If you think about what people thought about technology in the 90s and stuff, they didn't get it all right. All of our computers turned flat, and the monitors are now flat. We no longer have those big manila colored shells, those bulky computers. We now have computers in our phones, and mobile phones are very important, and everyone has them, and they're very used. When in the past, everything was focused on, there was a lot more design. Phones had color. Phones were round and cute. Some of them, they had cool wallpapers and this and that. Now, there's a lot of minimalism. Everything is very monotone and sleek. Which a lot of people nowadays will look back and, oh, I really miss those really cool looking phones and those tacky robot dogs and, all this stuff. But perhaps people will be saying the same thing about our aesthetic and generation. I'm not sure what it will look like in the future. All I can really think is that it's just going to be more minimalist, more sleek, which I don't think you can really get more basic than it is. So maybe we're going to have some kind of renaissance. That could be possible. I'm not sure. But I think people will look back on how we view the future and AI and robotics and stuff. Whether we're right or wrong, I think it's going to be a big focus. you see a lot of games right now, and in the past 5-ish plus years, a lot of games really focus on the early 3D rendering graphics. You know, stuff like low poly, PlayStation, those kind of vibes. You see a lot of games pick that up. So I wonder if in the future, games are going to maybe pick up on modern day graphics. But the thing is realism will always be modern, I think. Because if you think about like the big AAA games, they're all realistic. But since we're humans and we see the real world, realism is always going to be what we strive for, if that makes sense. So I think the default will always be realism. As technology gets better, we're just going to try and make it look realer and realer. At least with most games. Obviously there's going to be creative people who make it very artsy and have different styles. But if we're talking about themes and aesthetics, I think one from this time period that we're in currently, which might sound crazy, but I think early AI generated imagery. If you take a look at the really early and really crappy AI like images and videos, and they're all like a mush and they look really creepy and dreamy, I think in the future people will be coming back and making games and videos and stuff in that style once in the future when AI is like crazy good and, you know, we all get taken over by robots or whatever's gonna happen. That is my big prediction. Because I think, like, I can't think of anything else of this current time period that's like too interesting. You know, we have a lot of slang, and we have our whole kind of stimulation issue that people like to joke about, where we're all hooked up to like iPads and phones and screens, and you know, everything is flashing lights and stuff. Maybe in the future people will take that and pervert it and represent our time period with all of that. Like we were, you know, if there was a game made in today's style, like it was our aesthetic of today, the game might feature, you know, a lot of screens, a lot of flashing techie lights and stuff like that. So that could be one, but I just really hope that the era of aesthetics is over. Like I hope it isn't over, is what I meant. Is everything just gonna continue being sleek and minimalist? Is it just gonna keep leveling up to sleek number 2 and sleek number 3 and sleek number 4 until everything is just gray and colorless and soft, sleek and smooth? I'm not sure. And since all the people in the past could never predict the future, it almost makes me think that no, it won't be sleek and minimalist because something will change. Like our gut thought and our gut reaction will be wrong. That's kind of what I'm thinking, if everyone in the past has always been wrong about the future. But who knows, we might have hit the moment in history where it's kind of just pre-planned at this point. Tech is just going to get better, it's going to get smaller and sleeker. The designs, we're no longer going to put resources on designs, it's just going to be minimalist as possible. And yeah, if you look at like screensavers and wallpapers of the modern day, they're very dark and kind of spacey. If you think about like windows and stuff, there's a lot of like blue wispy light. That could be an aesthetic of the future. And our like very clean designs. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what it's gonna look like in the future when people look back at us. What's really funny to think about is, or something that people might not want to think about, is all of our slang today. That is something I can 100% see being, you know, looked back upon fondly. stuff like, Riz and, brain rot and all of that stuff that we have at the modern day, I can totally see that being looked back upon. Kind of like how we have stuff like Rage Comics and Trollface and Epic, like the word epic and Deal With It glasses. That was all early internet stuff. And it has come back in a way where people look back upon it fondly. I think that is going to happen. Well, it will, I'm sure, unless we just don't care at that point, because there's just going to be so many things to look back upon fondly. But I think it will happen, where it'll, people will make games in the future based on that aesthetic of our life, the memes and the culture, the pop culture. I wonder which aesthetics will be eternal. If you think about medieval, at least to me, seems like it's been around for a long time. And then you have things like cyberpunk, which has been around for a bit, but I feel like in the past 10 to 15 years it really became known and mainstream, where people, know cyberpunk. And obviously cyberpunk is fictional, but I mean, it might be the future, or a future. We also have liminal, which is very new, and very modern, and who knows how long it's gonna last, but as we see a future where I imagine we go outside less, and just the outside is used less, maybe, I could see liminal either getting more popular or less popular, because either people will just not go outside and have those memories of abandoned buildings. But if you think about it, I feel like a big fan base of liminal images and liminal stuff is kids and children who haven't been, around that long because they're young. But like, they don't have that nostalgia that the liminal images are supposed to inflict. So maybe the liminal images just look cool, or you can just kind of feel the effect and how cool they are just by looking at them. So yeah, maybe liminal images will be around for a while. It's gonna be really interesting because with the internet, it's all just gonna be saved and stored, and so in the future, no matter how many more aesthetics there are, it's all gonna be on some wiki, or it's all gonna be accessible. In an instant, you can go back and relive any year you want on YouTube or any websites and stuff like that. So it's gonna be a lot to to know about. So that's just gonna be really interesting and wild to think about. I wonder if anyone has done this, but there should be some kind of year-round, roundup, I guess? Like a yearly summary of the year for people in the future. I wonder if anyone has done that, but we should really do that because it's gonna be really exponentially difficult for people in the future to know exactly what our life was like. Because they're not going to be able to be alive during it, obviously. And I'm sure they can pull up evidence, but it's kind of different because a lot of things are going to be misconstrued. Like, they're not going to know the general idea, so the best thing we could do for archival purposes is just, make a yearly summary, or maybe even monthly. That way people can kind of understand exactly kind of how the world was, because with history we could just take a single thing and go crazy with it. Like, if you think about, like, Among Us was crazy and was very popular during the year it came out, people might look back on that in, 50 years and think everyone was playing Among Us, which was true, but they might think we all loved it. But a lot of people, were memeing on it, ironically, and a lot of people didn't like it, and a lot of parents and older people just had no idea what it was. But that kind of thing might get lost in translation. So I think having some kind of yearly summary will help. But it would have to be very self-aware and very, accurate and objective. It would have to be pretty truthful. So definitely a difficult task, but someone, please, should do it.